Welcome aboard. Whether you arrived here by accident or on purpose, just merely woke up and found yourself abducted and taken to this spot, follow the sound of my voice as you enter the world of fishing without bait, a lifetime without definitive expectations, where we explore our lives through full impact mindfulness. The only requirement is the honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness to try. If you're welcome nowhere else, you're certainly welcome here. I'm Jim Ellermeyer. I'm a behavioral health therapist, and as always, behind the mic is Mr. Mike himself, my good friend, co-host and co-producer of this program. And as we often promise, we offer an eclectic series of guests. And today I'm joined by a young lady who appeared on our 100th celebration podcast, Dr. Stephanie Hackett. Welcome aboard, Stephanie.
Hi, how are you, Jim? Thank you for having me.
Yes. Well, we asked you here because you've entered into a new phase of life. And quite often, Stephanie, what we suggest to people is that each phase of their life requires a new you. Okay? So let's talk about the new you.
New Stephanie. Well, I am now entering into an endeavor of wellness coaching and more specifically burnout coaching, where I'm helping busy professionals and entrepreneurs ease the signs and symptoms of the dreaded burnout that we often get in corporate America or as an entrepreneur.
Okay, so what would you describe burnout as?
Burnout is that, well, I can give you the kind of some signs and symptoms that maybe you could think, well, I'm under stress. And then we've got that little bit to the extreme of where I was. So maybe you have a little bit of stress or anxiety when you go to the office, or maybe you get the butterflies in your stomach and you're just starting to kind of think, is this really what's making me happy? That could be the beginning of burnout. And then delving into the depths where you're thinking, oh my God, is this all that there is? You're kind of despondent, you're detached from your work, you're detached from your coworkers, maybe even feeling a little hopeless, feeling depressed, kind of just saying to yourself, is this really all there is? The stress has become chronic, the anxiety is chronic, and just kind of feel like you're hitting bottom with no way out.
Well said. And I have a hunch you swum in this water.
I was swimming, barely keeping my nose above the water, yes.
Well, Stephanie, sometimes in life we kind of refer to that as, I bought a ticket to a movie, but I must be in the wrong theater.
Mm-hmm.
As this isn't what I signed up for.
This isn't what I signed up for, exactly.
So how do you help people, first of all, be aware of that?
Well, a lot of times people don't even realize maybe that's how they're feeling and that's what it is that they're feeling. So I start off just telling people what the signs and symptoms of burnout are, maybe presenting some problems that they may have, and people are eventually going, oh, that sounds like me, or that's really hitting a chord with me. And then they start following me a little bit and see that I'm really talking about a lot of the different signs and symptoms of burnout, and they're realizing that, what I'm saying is really resonating with them. And then, to really teach people then how to get out of to recognize and be self-aware enough to recognize when you're being triggered and when your signs and symptoms are being exacerbated, and then teach them the tools and techniques to then counteract that.
So we often suggest to people that they stay in situations not because they're comfortable, because they're familiar.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people are afraid of change. Absolutely. And what I like to say about change is you will kind of stay in the place that you are until the pain of staying where you are is greater than the pain of moving forward and changing.
Well, one of the Joker quotes is that if you don't like where you're at, move, you're not a tree.
No.
Okay, those are words, but actually helping somebody do that is a totally different type of story. So we're talking about acceptance. What you're talking about is it sounds like people would come to you and maybe say, man, and again, I speak 12-step lingo constantly, and everybody out there knows that, the restless, irritable, and discontent feeling.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So describe to me what restless, irritable, and discontent is for you.
Oh, for me now, or for me when I was in
When you were restless, irritable, and discontent?
when I was restless, irritable, and discontent. Well, for me, I still tend to get irritable, maybe a little too often. It's just kind of an almost like underlying, almost like a little insect or something that's just kind of underneath the surface, and you just want to like scratch it and let it out. That's kind of that restlessness and irritability that I get sometimes. But honestly, with some of the meditation and kind of practices that I've been on course with lately, I don't get restless, irritable, and discontent too often.
Cool. So I liked your descriptor about the insect, and sometimes I refer to it as when the world feels like you're rubbing against sandpaper.
Yep.
So when people come to you and they say that, tell me your next steps.
Well, we kind of get, I like to take a future kind of outcome oriented approach to change. So we don't look at why are you feeling that way, what happened. It's really taking that future oriented approach to say, where would you like to be? How do you want to feel? How would you rather feel? What will get you moving toward feeling that way, as opposed to, kind of not really focusing on what happened or what caused it, but just focusing on moving forward.
What sounds like what you're suggesting is, hey, we know what didn't work.
Yep.
We don't need to rehash
Yep,
that.
absolutely.
So in the 12-step world, what we often say is, we don't care what you've done. What we care is what you're going to do about it.
Yep.
So when somebody comes to you and they say, I'm stuck, what can you do for me?
Well, I'm not going to do anything for you. You have to
Cool.
do the work yourself.
Isn't that amazing?
I can definitely provide information.
Okay.
And accountability and support, but inevitably it's the client that has to do
So
the
you
work.
just can't make everything all right at once?
No, it's a journey.
Your magic wand doesn't work?
No, the batteries have gone dead.
So unfortunately, that's what people expect. We live in a society, in a world where we're constantly bombarded with sights, sounds, and images about what we're supposed to be, and that we're not supposed to experience any discomfort at all.
Well, yeah, I definitely believe that that's what we're fed in the media and magazines and, everywhere, television, everywhere we look. But that's change doesn't happen in the comfort zone. The good stuff doesn't happen in the comfort zone.
Say more about that comfort zone.
Oh, well, we all like that comfort zone. It's that warm, fuzzy blanket that we have wrapped around us that makes us feel like, we're nice and safe and secure, and we don't need to move. We don't need to make any changes because everything's just nice and familiar and feels nice and safe. And change is something different. Change can be scary because you don't know what's coming up next. Change is very scary because of the unexpectedness of it, I think.
Unexpectedness of it.
Yeah.
That's great. So sometimes we refer to that comfort zone. Sometimes we refer to people as a balloon with an infinite capacity for expansion. And sometimes our job, Stephanie, is to get people frustrated enough so they inflate enough to get against that bonds, that barriers of that comfort zone. So sometimes what we do is help people label and identify what it's not a comfort zone. Actually, what it is a prison. So we get people frustrated enough, and I often tell people, I'm not running the friendship club. You came to me to help you help yourself get well, and sometimes that's not sitting here and holding your hand and being your friend.
Right, absolutely. I don't tell people, what they want to hear. I tell them what they need to hear.
Okay.
And sometimes that's not always, what they want to hear.
Right.
It makes them uncomfortable. It pushes them out of their comfort zone.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
Isn't that wonderful? So how can you, when did you develop the ability to accept the fact that people are going to get frustrated with you?
Oh, I mean, anytime we've got somebody who's kind of trying to make us change or kind of, nudge us in a different direction, I think they can get frustrated with you. And sometimes I think people take maybe their failures out on their coach as well, thinking that, well, I gave them bad advice, or something's not working out, and it comes back to, are they doing the work that needs to be done.
So you describe yourself as a holistic wellness person.
Yep.
So what does holistic mean to you?
Well, holistic means kind of embodying all three of our, the mental, the physical, and the spiritual.
Okay. So sometimes we refer to people as flowers, okay? So what are the three things that it takes a flower to bloom?
Well, we need some water, we need some sunshine, and some food.
Planted in good soil, right? Mm-hmm. So, and again, I keep going back to the 12-step world. And what we refer to, the water, is taking care of your physical self. And that's something I'm sure that you're well aware of. And then what we talk about is the sun. We talk, again, 12-step terms, we talk about the sunlight of the spirit, of some type of a spiritual connection with something, whatever that might be. And then when we talk about the environment, we talk about the people, places, and things that you surround yourself with that help you grow or not grow. Mm-hmm. So if you if you take a beautiful blooming flower and transplant it into a sandbox, what happens?
Well, it's probably going to die.
It's going to wither and die, right? However, some people don't understand that they're sitting in a sandbox. So how do you gently nudge people toward maybe recognizing that?
It's a lot of just asking some powerful questions, getting them to really delve deep into, kind of the inside of themselves.
Yeah.
So asking things like, well, how do you feel about this? Or posing a scenario or a metaphor and saying, how does that resonate with you?
Yeah.
And getting them to really explore kind of the inner workings of their mind, explore their feelings. It's amazing the number of people who don't really, who aren't connected to their feelings, who aren't really that self-aware.
Say more about that.
Well, I always thought everyone was pretty self-aware because I am. And I've realized through my market research and working with clients that not everybody is that self-aware. So I try to take people through some exercises where, we talk about feelings, we talk about things that trigger our emotions, and we talk about just different ways to kind of take care of ourselves. And
Yeah, so labeling and identifying thoughts and feelings is incredibly important. My guess is, and my hunch is, that you also ask people to take ownership of themselves and understand that most of the problems in people's lives are of their own making.
That's where accountability comes into play. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So accountability is a huge part of it. And I don't want everyone out there to think that Stephanie and I are sitting on top of this high mountain surrounded by blinding white light, telling the rest of the world how to run their lives, okay? I'm sure that both Stephanie and I paint ourselves with the same brush, okay? We swim in that water. I was sharing with Stephanie earlier. Someone had contacted me and said, Jim, how are you? And I said, well, if I would take most of the suggestions that I give to my patients, I'd probably be doing a lot better.
Well, I have been trying to follow the words that I preach and, walk my talk. I put out a 28-day challenge to my followers and said, I'm going to quit smoking. What are you going to quit or start? And join me for this 28-day journey.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to say that I have had more smoke-free days than smoke days,
which is great when we have others committed with us.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful journey. I'm getting to know these women, that we've met just through Facebook online and forming a community and supporting each other.
Isn't that
and
great?
Yeah, it's been really nice. And it's nice to have that accountability, knowing that
Wonderful.
I have to out myself if I have a cigarette,
Well, it's hard to suggest something to somebody if you hadn't done it yourself.
Yeah.
How could I possibly suggest skydiving to somebody if I've never done it?
Yeah.
Good for you. Good for you.
Thanks, Jim.
That's so you're putting yourself out there. Mm-hmm. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so let's talk about this wellness aspect. What do you start off with?
Well, I really like to start people off with, because we know that they're coming to me because they have some kind of problem and they're looking for some kind of change in their life. Right? Something is not, they're not content with something and they need to change, whether they know it's their job, maybe it's their weight, maybe it's their, their frame of mind. They realize they've got the wrong frame of mind. So we come to a decision of, what is your goal? What do you want to change? I go through very in-depth with goal setting and helping people set goals, determine what goals are achievable.
I like that word.
Yeah, coming up with action plans and really delving deep into, what is your why? What is the why, the big reason behind your behavior change?
So how do you suggest to people that some goal or two may be unrealistic?
Well, I like to not necessarily tell somebody that their goal is unrealistic, but really kind of reframe it into, how can we break it down into more actionable goals for things that I like to have people break down their goals so that they have small successes and frequent successes. So, if you want to be a gymnastics instructor, but you've never actually done a cartwheel, you're not going to just in 6 months probably become a U.S. Olympic, gymnastics coach. You're going to have to go through some baby steps along the way. So we can take that large, seemingly impossible goal and break it into things that are a lot more manageable and shorter time frames, so
like
that
that
you're
term.
Getting some successes along the way.
I like that term, reframing. That's so
yeah.
you ask them to put it in a different light. And one of the things that we attempt to do is point out blind spots to people. Mm-hmm. So it's one thing to say hula hoop because it's good for you. It's another thing to say hula hoop because it's good for you, as evidenced by, and here's the reasons that, here's the benefits that you will achieve.
Yeah.
So, and that, you just can't make those up. Or you can.
Please check out our website at fishingwithoutbait.com, where you can listen to the show, comment on our discussions, and find out where you can subscribe to our podcast. If you're interested in flying the colors of Fishing Without Bait, click the shop icon on our website. We have clothing, mugs, cell phone cases, and so much more. Show the world that you fish without bait. This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.